You don't mess with this British Army open-topped attack vehicle, the Jackal, and probably best not to mess with its passenger, the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper. She's in the trenches in Poland, 50 miles from the border with Russia, to make a point about why the UK needs new defences and more money spent on our defences. So what we're seeing here is NATO troops, including British, American and Polish troops, on manoeuvres every single day. Such is the perceived threat from Russia. We're seeing extraordinary preparations for a possible war with Russia, which reinforces, doesn't it, that we need to set a date in the UK for hitting defence spending 3% of national income.
We do need to increase our defence spending. We have already done that since the election. We have increased spending, but we are going to have to go a lot further. We've seen the increased Russian aggression. Even if we manage to get some ending or halt to the conflict in Ukraine, we know that Russia's just going to keep rearming.
On Tuesday, the Prime Minister will publish his Defence Investment Plan, whose funding caused the resignation of Defence Secretary John Healey, but has only been marginally improved since. So, in your view, does that mean that even after it's published, to be clear, that funding issue is still open and it is something that Andy Burnham will have to grasp in his opening weeks?
Well, we're going to have to get to 3%. We've made a longer term commitment to get to 3.5%. And I have been clear we are going to need to go further. We're going to have to go further, faster. We're going to have to make progress because our defence is really important. Inspecting defences near the Russian border in a Soviet-era Polish helicopter. History weighs heavy as it does in another conflict.
Do you think Andy Burnham will be tougher with Israel?
Well, I'm deeply worried about what is happening in Palestine. I think we are going to have to take stronger action. We started to do that with some stronger sanctions, particularly around the West Bank. We're looking at what further we can do and how else we can strengthen the sanctions regime.
If Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, he'd love to have one of these, a big bazooka, to fix all his spending needs. But none probably exists, and Cooper is telling him he's inheriting a big hole in defence spending. And even though he might be able to camouflage it, the hole is still there. Foreign Secretary, here in Poland, close to the Russian border, we're seeing extraordinary preparations for a possible war with Russia, which reinforces, doesn't it, that we need to set a date in the UK for hitting defence spending 3% of national income, don't we? We do need to increase our defence spending. I think really for too long in the UK, people had assumed that the post-Cold War peace dividend was just going to last forever, even when Russia invaded Crimea. So you're talking about more than a decade ago, there was still a government assumption that we could carry on with reducing defence spending when actually we needed to invest more. So we do have to go further, we do have to invest more. We have already done that. Since the election, we have increased spending, but we are going to have to go a lot further. Other countries are, we are going to have to do that too. I mean, Poland are spending 4.8% of their national income on defence. We won't get to 2.68% until 2030. I mean, coming here, I completely understand why John Healey said it was unacceptable and why he resigned. Well, I'm very clear. We're going to have to go further. And faster? And faster? I think we are going to have to, yeah. We are going to have to because, look, we've seen the increased Russian aggression. We've seen the fact that they've built up a huge war economy now, so that even if we manage to get some ending or halt to the conflict in Ukraine, we know that Russia's just going to keep rearming. And that's why this is about deterrence here in Poland, here in the Kaliningrad borders and the Belarus border. Some of this is actually about having the deterrence being strong enough as part of the eastern flank of NATO that you can prevent Russia taking action or causing those threats. But we have to be really open-eyed about the kinds of threats that Europe faces, and that means the UK faces as well. That is important, and it comes against a backdrop of a more unstable world and different instability in so many different ways, as we've seen even just as far as the Strait of Hormuz, where we also have to make sure that we can use some military support to help demine the Strait of Hormuz. So in so many different areas,
there are real responsibilities on us, but also real security threats we have to be able to deal with.
The Prime Minister is planning to publish the Defence Investment Plan next week. That includes the funding that John Healey, until recently Defence Secretary, thought was inadequate. He should delay publication. He should leave it to Andy Burnham, shouldn't he?
Well, I think there are various projects that the Ministry of Defence need to be able to get on with, that our armed forces need to be able to get on with. So there's a whole series of things as part of the Defence Investment Plan we have to be able to get on with, but we are also going to have to go further. So we just are. That is the reality of the challenges that we face in terms of security, in terms of global instability and conflict. So we have to face up to the fact as a country that means we are going to have to go further on defence spending.
So in your view, does that mean that even after it's published, to be clear, that funding issue is still open and it is something that Andy Burnham will have to grasp in his opening weeks?
Well, we're going to have to get to 3%. We've made a longer term commitment to get to 3.5%. We are going to have to do that. We are going to have to increase our defence spending. So, of course, all of this is going to have to be continually reviewed, continually improved on. We are going to have to do that. I don't think we have any choice as a country. If we want to be strong and resilient in the face of these whirlwinds and storms around the world, we are going to have to do more on our securing our defence, because that is the underpinning. That security is the underpinning on which everything else we do really depends. It's also what gives us our influence and helps us in the UK influence other countries to do things that are in our interests as well.
You'll have seen Keith Blount in the Times warning that unless we set a firm date, 2030, for reaching 3% with a timetable, proper increments to get there, which we don't have, he says we will lose that really important, effectively deputy military position within NATO.
Well, that role in NATO is a hugely important one. And we've seen the US are shifting their focus, and they've been very clear about that. And to be honest, in Europe, I think we have depended on the US for too long. Yeah. The security partnership is still important, needs to continue, but the US are going to shift their focus elsewhere. And therefore, we need to make sure that Europe can defend itself. And the UK is a crucial part of that, as we've seen in terms of Ukraine. So I think that the capabilities that we've got, the leadership we have always traditionally played in NATO is immensely important, but that is one of the reasons that I have been clear.
Is that post at risk, Foreign Secretary?
That's one of the reasons why I have been clear we are going to need to go further, and there's no point in pretending yet to ourselves we're going to have to go further, faster. We're going to have to make progress, because our defence is really important. We have come a long way, we have turned it round since the election, but we are going to have to do much more.
Two other foreign policy things that really matter to your MPs. One, certainly a majority of those I talk to think that the new Prime Minister has to be tougher on Israel and its actions in Gaza and the West Bank than the current Prime Minister. Do you think they are right? Do you think Andy Burnham will be tougher with Israel?
Well, I'm deeply worried about what is happening in Palestine. We have recognised the state of Palestine that includes Gaza and the West Bank, and we've seen in Gaza the 20-point plan is currently stalled. And I am very worried about what's happening there, but I'm also very worried about what is happening in the West Bank, where we've seen increases in settler violence and also the expansion of settlements in a way that looks designed to prevent any possibility of a sustainable two-state solution, that you have some people even, just talking about the most dangerous and damaging things. So that's why I think we are going to have to do more on Israel-Palestine. We are going to have to take stronger action. We started to do that with some stronger sanctions, as particularly around the West Bank. We're looking at what further we can do and how else we can strengthen the sanctions regime.
And when you saw that UN Commission saying that there has been Israeli genocide against children, what did you think?
I think the impact on what's happening on children is just horrific.
Is it genocide?
So I think, look, as you know, there is a legal position that the UK takes, which this needs to go through a court process, and we respect that in terms of a court process. But either way, in some ways, the language, it doesn't get away from that. It's the reality of what is happening to children. You've got the children who have lost their lives, there are thousands of children who have lost their lives, but also those who have just been denied schooling, denied education, and living in the most horrendous conditions. One of the things we need to see in Gaza is we have to get in some proper housing, some temporary housing for people. Families are living in the most horrendous conditions. At the moment, the Israeli government is refusing to let in some of the basic housing materials that they need, even just to put up temporary big tents and housing, because they see it as dual use. That is incredibly damaging, and it is having a humanitarian impact, and it's just appalling what is happening. So we are going to have to do more collectively. This is an international challenge.
And finally, you'll have seen Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, thought of as an ally of Donald Trump, absolutely tearing him off a strip the other day. Should we see a British Prime Minister essentially showing what they really feel about Trump?
Well, the US President's job is to look after the US. The UK Prime Minister's job is to look after UK interests. That's one of the reasons why we did not provide support. Well, we didn't provide support for the conflict in Iran, for the offensive activity by both the US and Israel. We concluded that was the wrong thing to do. So, of course, the UK Prime Minister needs to stand up for UK national interest.
Foreign Secretary, very good to see you. Thank you.